No one could have guessed that an ordinary-looking black man was the new owner of this luxurious showroom. Today, prejudices would be challenged, and a profound lesson would be etched into memory forever. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the glass walls of the showroom, illuminating the gleaming luxury cars. The rich scent of genuine leather and polished wax filled the air, accentuating the opulence of the space. Susan, the showroom manager, stood near the reception desk. Her sharp eyes scanned every movement in the room, missing nothing. Then Jacob walked in. Bookmark. His faded hoodie, worn-out jeans, and old sneakers instantly made him seem out of place. But what caught Susan's attention first wasn't his attire, it was his dark skin. In that fleeting moment, she had already drawn her conclusion. This man didn't belong here. Jacob entered the showroom calmly. His gaze swept across the space, pausing briefly on the judgmental stares of the staff before moving on. He was used to this, the glances, the furrowed brows of prejudice. But today, he wasn't here to confront them. He was here to observe. Susan adjusted her jacket, maintaining a polite and professional demeanor. But deep down, she couldn't hide her thought. This is not our type of customer. Jacob stopped in front of a gleaming silver coupe. He smiled. A subtle but meaningful smile. Without saying a word, he understood everything through the silence around him. Susan watched as Jacob approached. Her eyes flicked over his faded hoodie, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers. She smiled, but her expression betrayed a silent judgment. "Hello, how can our showroom assist you today?" she asked, her voice polite but tinged with distance. Jacob slowly pointed toward the sleek silver coupe nearby. "I'd like to take a look at this one." Susan hesitated for a moment, but quickly regained her professional poise. "This car is part of our premium line. Typically, customers are pre-approved financially before we proceed," she said, her eyes never leaving him. Jacob chuckled softly, his gaze calm, as if testing something unspoken. "Are you suggesting I'm not qualified?" The question caught Susan off guard. She hesitated for a brief second before quickly reconstructing her professional facade. "Oh no, what I meant was, we usually suggest models that might be more suitable for our customers," she replied, her words coming out slightly faster than usual. Jacob stood still, his eyes fixed on her. "More suitable? Then perhaps you can suggest which ones you mean?" Susan paused, feeling cornered into an answer. "Give me a moment, I'll grab a list," she said, before turning and walking away briskly. But her steps lacked the confidence they had earlier. Jacob watched it all, saying nothing. He already understood how this place operated. When Susan returned, she carried a printed list of pre-owned cars. The smile on her face now carried a hint of triumph. Placing the paper in front of Jacob, she spoke in a tone that barely concealed her condescension. "I believe these models would be more appropriate for your budget." Jacob picked up the list, glancing briefly at a used sedan and an older SUV. He folded the paper neatly and placed it back on the counter. "And what makes you think these cars are a better fit for me?" Susan frowned slightly, her voice turning colder. "I'm just trying to save you some time. These cars are more practical for certain customers." Jacob met her gaze directly, his tone no longer gentle. "Certain customers? You mean black customers like me?" The room seemed to freeze. The other employees exchanged uneasy glances, a heavy silence settling over the space. Susan hesitated, momentarily flustered, but quickly composed herself. "That's not what I meant," she said, though her tone betrayed her. "I'm simply saying these high-end cars aren't for everyone." Jacob gave a faint, cold smile, his eyes sharp. "Then let's make one thing clear. I'd like to speak with the highest-ranking manager here." Susan froze, her expression tinged with panic. "The owner isn't here. They're a very busy person." "Then go ahead and call them," Jacob said, his voice calm but commanding. "I'm certain they'll want to speak with me." Susan stood there, unsure of what to do next. But before she could respond, Jacob calmly pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and spoke briefly, his words clear and firm. "I'm at the showroom. It seems there's a misunderstanding that needs addressing." Less than 5 minutes later, the showroom doors swung open. A sharply dressed man in a tailored suit walked in, his face lighting up as soon as he saw Jacob. "Mr. Carter, such a pleasure to see you." Susan stood frozen in place. The list in her hand slipped to the floor as the truth hit her like a wave. Jacob, the man she had just judged and dismissed, was the new owner of the showroom. "I think we need to have a conversation," Jacob said, his tone calm yet authoritative. "About how we treat customers, no matter what they look like." The entire showroom fell silent. The tension in the air was palpable, heavy enough to cut through. In the conference room, the atmosphere was equally tense. The showroom staff, including Susan, sat around the table, their unease evident in their posture and expressions. Jacob stood at the head of the table. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence commanded their full attention. "I didn't come here today to inspect the cars," Jacob began, his voice steady but firm. "I came to see how this place operates, how you treat the people who walk through those doors." Jacob paused, his eyes sweeping over everyone in the room before settling on Susan. "And I have to say, I'm very disappointed." Susan took a deep breath, gripping her clipboard tightly as if it were a lifeline. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice shaky, I apologize for misjudging you. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to?" Jacob interrupted, his tone still calm but piercing. "Then tell me this. If I weren't the owner today, if I were just an ordinary man, would you still believe I deserve the same respect as anyone else who walked through those doors?" The room fell silent. Susan lowered her head, unable to answer. The rest of the staff sat frozen, avoiding Jacob's gaze. "This isn't just about me," Jacob continued, his voice growing firmer. "Every person who walks into this showroom brings with them hopes and expectations of being treated fairly. But prejudice, whether intentional or not, is killing those opportunities, and it's also killing our reputation." He turned back to Susan, his tone softening. "I'm not here to humiliate you, Susan. I want you to understand that this cannot continue. This is an opportunity for you and for this team to change." Susan looked up, her eyes red and tearful. "I understand, Mr. Carter. I was wrong. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this mistake." Jacob nodded, his gaze softening slightly. "I believe in second chances, but change has to come from actions, not just words." He turned to the entire room, his voice growing firm again. "Starting today, we'll begin new training sessions focused on respect and equality. If anyone feels they can't agree with this, there's the door. But if you want to build a place where everyone feels welcome, I'll be here to work with you to make that happen." The room nodded collectively, the determination in their eyes gradually replacing hesitation. Susan, still somewhat shaken, stood up. "I'll do the right thing, Mr. Carter. I give you my word." Jacob gave a faint smile, one of trust. "I hope so, Susan. And I hope you all understand that how we treat people is what truly defines excellence." A week after the incident at the showroom, the atmosphere had noticeably changed. The staff, including Susan, participated in a special training session on customer service and recognizing unconscious biases. In the conference room, Jacob stood before the team, his gaze gentle yet resolute. "I want to thank all of you for being willing to change," he began. "I know it's not easy, but if we want to create a place where everyone feels respected, change is essential." Susan sat in the front row, quietly listening. Her face no longer carried the smugness it once had. Over the past week, she had taken the initiative to personally apologize to every employee and even to the customers she had wronged. Her sincerity earned her understanding and a second chance from many. Jacob turned to Susan, a faint smile crossing his lips. "Susan, you've done well. I've heard about the changes you've made this past week. It shows that commitment isn't just about words, it's about actions." Susan nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I've realized that we're not just selling cars, we're selling trust and respect." Jacob nodded approvingly. "Exactly. That's why I want us to always remember. Every customer who walks in here has value, not because of what they buy, but because of who they are." After the meeting, Jacob stepped into the showroom, his eyes landing on a young family admiring an SUV. A staff member who had hesitated to welcome Jacob during his initial visit now greeted the family with genuine warmth and sincerity. The sight brought a sense of relief to Jacob. Nearby, Susan stood quietly, watching Jacob with newfound respect. She understood that the lesson that day wasn't just about a car or a transaction. It was about how we treat people. Jacob walked out of the showroom, the evening sunlight glinting off his worn sneakers. He smiled. The showroom wasn't just selling cars anymore. It was changing the way people saw one another's worth. In life, some things can't be judged by appearances. The value of a person, kindness, and respect. True class isn't defined by what we wear. It's defined by how we treat each other. Jacob believed that everyone deserves to be seen and treated with dignity. And if we start with the smallest gestures, like how we greet a customer, the world can become a better place, one step at a time. What about you? Have you ever found yourself unintentionally judging someone based on their appearance? If this story made you reflect, consider sharing it with your friends and loved ones. Let the message of respect and equality reach even further. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to follow more meaningful stories like this one. Every share you make is a step toward creating change together. See you in the next story.